Today, I want to talk to you about Bitcoin. But in order to understand what Bitcoin is, we're going to have to understand the systems of currency and trade. And in order to understand what currency and trade are, we're going to have to talk about some history. Before currency, we had a system of barter and trade. If I grew oranges and you grew apples, we could barter on how many apples to oranges it took to trade one another. But say if I provided a service, say I tended to your orange field, and I didn't want your oranges as payment, I wanted the apples. Well, you could pay me in a currency for my services, and then I could trade that currency for my apples. Today, major banking institutions run off the fiat currency system. But throughout history, rare metals were often used to conduct trade, such as gold, silver, nickel, and copper. Coins. And you can see the remnants of that old system in today's British currency system, the sterling and the pound, or with the nickel in North America. However, carrying and storing precious metals, it can be quite burdensome. So that gave way to the creation of the first ever banks, institutions where you could store your valuables in exchange for paper notes. The Knights Templar are often credited with the creation of the first ever banks during the Great Crusades. They would allow you to store your valuables in a country such as France, and for a hefty fee, allow you to trade in your paper note in places like Jerusalem. It allowed you to not get robbed along your trip. This set the groundwork for what would later become the gold standard. See, the idea of paper money scared people, so holders of it were allowed to trade in its value for gold at a bank. This gave way for the creation of places like the stock exchange, which allowed you to exchange large sums of currency for precious metals. The creation of the stock exchange created a boom in the economy, commerce, and trade. And then on October 24th, 1929, the whole system came crashing down. There are too many factors to discuss what led to the Great Depression in this video. But what people figured out was they can't eat paper money, and they sure can't eat gold. So in the 1930s, the US and the UK abolished the gold standard. Throughout the 20th century, the fiat currency system would be adopted by major countries. The last country to drop the gold standard was Switzerland in 1999. The fiat currency system is complicated. The amount of currency that's in circulation is controlled by a country's central bank. How much purchasing power that currency has is determined by a lot of things, such as how much of it is in circulation or a country's GDP. But what's for sure is the holders of fiat do not control any power. As more and more currency enters into the system, the purchasing power of that currency goes down. This is called inflation. With the rise of technology, people began to ask, why can't currency be digital? There's no need to hold on to a physical currency if it can be represented electronically within a bank's records. But that began a lot of questions around digital transactions. For example, it's a lot easier to counterfeit an electronic transaction. Another problem that people began to see is that a bank had no reason to disclose its records. Therefore, it's impossible to see what a bank is doing with their money. Many people began to wonder, are banks doing risky investments? On September 28, 2008, the system crashed again. Many factors led into the Great Recession, too many to discuss in this vlog alone. But through it all, a new system was proposed. See, in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, there was a movement called the cypherpunks. Out of that movement, a man began to address the issues around digitally recording transactions. He went by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, and he had a vision. That vision was Bitcoin, and it would be built on the back of the decentralized blockchain. The blockchain is a confirmation method that records every transaction within it. As each transaction happens, it is stored into a block. Once that block is completed, that block joins the rest of the blocks and are chained together. This allows you to go back and see every transaction that has ever happened on the blockchain network. The network is distributed on computers around the world. These machines are tasked with providing confirmation over confirmation again and again of every transaction that has ever happened on the blockchain network. For this task, these machines are rewarded with Bitcoin. This is the process called mining. For each block created, 10.5 Bitcoin are released. That will eventually be halved and then halved again, until around 2030, when a cap of 21 million Bitcoin are ever going to be released. On January 12th, 2009, the first Bitcoin transaction ever happened between Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney. Here's a crazy thing. Satoshi Nakamoto, no one knows who he really is. That name is completely made up, and a lot of people think it may actually be Hal Finney. Then, on February 6, 2010, somebody sent 10,000 Bitcoin for $25 worth of pizza. That created a market value for Bitcoin. Shortly after, exchanges sprung up online. Why does any of this matter? Well, Bitcoin addresses several key issues around recording digital transactions. The first is inflation. We know there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. This will force the purchasing power of Bitcoin to go up. As Bitcoin becomes more and more accessible, as the demand for Bitcoin increases, its value will go up. This is simple supply and demand economics. Bitcoin also addresses record holding, as an open ledger creates transparency, something major banking institutions do not want. Lastly, Bitcoin addresses hefty banking fees. Banks charge enormous fees to move money, especially across borders. Those fees are often a percentage of what you are trying to send. Bitcoin miners are not rewarded with a percentage of your money. Instead, fees are applied by how difficult it is to create the block. Here's an interesting fact about Bitcoin's numbers. With only 21 million Bitcoins ever being created and 7.5 billion people on the earth today, that means there are only 0.0028 of Bitcoin available for everyone on earth today. And that concludes my first vlog on Bitcoin. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up and give me a subscribe. I plan on making more videos about how to buy, sell, and even make 100% profitable trades on Bitcoin. And if you want to get started in Bitcoin, click some of the links below to either buy, sell, or get invested in some other cryptocurrencies.